Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Aliens and Angels podcast. So today, I'm very happy to bring back Jeff Selver. And for those who are not yet familiar with Jeff, let me tell you a little bit about him. With an MBA and a passion for management and leadership, Jeff worked in banks, corporate training as a motivational speaker, and he taught mindful leadership. He has also been under the tutelage of a Vedic teacher for over 20 years, where he learned Vedic philosophy and meditation. When his memories of alien contact surfaced, Jeff began presenting on his contact events in UFO groups, sharing his story in detail and providing research and corroboration with other experiencers. In December of 1997, Jeff experienced the Rising, which was an agreement with gray aliens to discover his soul. The Rising required him to take a leap of faith, sell all of his possessions, and begin a life traveling from place to place. What unfolds is truly an epic adventure of removal from society and living close to nature, all the while having contact events with gray aliens without his knowing. In summary, his book, The Rising, tells of 26 contact events with gray aliens. It's told in amazing detail and is spread out from the years 1993 to 2017. Fundamentally, Jeff was shown that what humans understand about spirituality, life and death, dimensions, God, the soul, and psychic powers are just the beginning of what these beings are all about. And their capacity, understanding, and utilization of these is much greater than humans can imagine. Jeff's story shows that the only way we will ever be able to understand the grays is to understand the power of our own personal spiritual potential. All of the links are featured below in the description. And also, please check out the last few episodes of this show and also the Quantum Guide show to see more details, as we've discussed on my shows, of Jeff Selver's amazing adventures with the gray aliens. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing, and please do share this content with your friends. And I'm happy to announce that I have channel memberships. So if you wish to join, you can take advantage of my perks. Well, without further ado, let's bring Jeff on. Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
Good, Karen. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. Now, I've been following you lately on Facebook. And as you know, there's been all kinds of sightings. Like I would
Yeah,
say more sightings in the last month than probably in the last 5 years. It's just been crazy.
yeah, agreed.
And a lot of people can't agree on what this might be and what it might not be. And then I saw your post where you realized or found out that they're actually your contacts. And I'm wondering if you want to share a little bit about what's going on and how that relates for you, Jeff.
Yeah. So, so many ways to talk about this. But I think the public needs to know that when I talk about this connection and this link is not my nature to, to to not talk about it to such a degree that I don't have enough evidence for the public. I want to be the type of person who's giving, solid information to people. And all I can do is talk about my personal experience. And the entities allowed me to film them as one of these drones, but you can't tell that to the videos. And so all I have is my personal testimony. And I can say with my own personal testimony, 100% these things that are down south, at least the ones that I have seen the news report about are definitely my entities. Now, let me tell you how I know that. So, for those who are new to this information, it's not uncommon that if you had physical contact, you may still have sightings. And a lot of the researchers, since the 70s have known this, that contactees will continue to have repeated sightings. They may be the ones to be able to do a lot of film, catching a film of crafts. And so that's the case here, where my memories came out in 2019, and it was assisted with an object that I was able to capture on film. Orbs at time. Most of the time they were orbs, white. And when they were wanting me to film them, they were typically red. So they actually displayed patterns. And throughout my entire last 5 years, they displayed all these wild patterns, repeating things twice and only twice. So I had a period where the elder was showing herself as a angel hair, like a plasma entity angel hair type thing. And it would be in front of my eyes. And in some cases, what I was witnessing was tens of feet, if not only 100 feet away. So there's no way to just, to confuse Venus with the things I'm seeing, kind of thing. And when I went to, so my whole point about why would the aliens even be that way with me? Well, for me, it's just crystal clear. I have a message from them. Right. So then they are aware of that, and then they're kind of like assisting. Right. So I think of like Chris Bledsoe this way as well, too. Chris Bledsoe, who's verified by the CIA and FBI. The reason the aliens would do that, allow them to be caught on film with him, is because it verifies the message that he puts out. And that's what's going on here. Yeah, that's what's going on here, too. The aliens are very aware. They're very aware that they're doing this with me, and then it gets combined with a message. So the public who the sightings aren't independent of the person who is able to film them. And that is the case for everybody, by the way. If some Joe Blow is capturing them, not that I believe anybody's a Joe Blow in this world, but the random person, appearing random person, sometimes it's in line with that person who never believed, and I want to believe, and all of a sudden they'll show themselves, and the person's able to capture on film. But there's always a personal interaction that's much deeper than just the film, right? The whole story behind that's just on the film. There's sometimes a story about the actual individual and their relationship to consciousness or exploration. So there's always a grander picture. Anybody who's touched the phenomenon so far knows that. And that's what's going on here. So they have been in my life pretty consistently this entire time. So I went to Contact in the Desert to promote the book. And I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And I gave the book to a bunch of people and talked and talked and talked. And it was 100% as if it was a reward. As I left Contact in the Desert, the very last night, I left my friends at 10 that night to catch a plane at 4 a.m. And I left the hotel where it was at, and I was in a very dark parking lot that had nobody in it, and across the sky was going a black triangle craft. I'd never seen that in my life, but again, it was the beginning of a weird pattern, seeing something very abnormal when I was not in my own vicinity outside of Vancouver. I'm looking at something I'd never seen before, a black triangle craft. And it was moving across, and I couldn't film it because it was too dark. And I screwed up trying to film it anyway. But the bottom line is I came back from Vancouver, and the entire vibe of my contact had changed. My sightings had changed with them. They were the black triangle craft at first. So I saw it one night. I basically come out because I would repeatedly see them. So I go out to the top of my deck here, and the black triangle craft, just days after I saw it out in California in Contact in the Desert, comes back, and it's flying over top of me. It does this barrel roll, and listen, I'm linked to this entity. I know this entity. I feel this entity to be my friend, and like a spirit guide, if you will, and has helped me considerably, and is very, very, respects my boundaries and things that people have all this mythology about gray aliens that don't fit with my personal experience. And this entity, likes me and cares, and we've played, and there, I don't get any nefarious nothing has ever displayed itself to be nefarious. And so this object is barrel rolling around, and I tell it I love it. I'm like, I love you. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is amazing. It shines a light at me, and then it transforms in front of my face into an airplane. and I see it come around and burl around, and it goes over top of me. And then over a series of repeated events over different nights, it starts appearing as an airplane. So every time she came back, she's an airplane. And it was because I'd seen it previously turn into an airplane. Now I was really confused. What used to be orbs are now airplanes. And I didn't understand that. So this is back in June of 2024. I caught video of it. I didn't really show it to too many people because at the time, you're just going to assume I'm capturing an airplane. So I was kind of annoyed, actually. I was actually just annoyed. I'm like, why are you doing this? Why did you make it so much more harder? You're actually closer. So she was able to I was now dealing with, hundreds of feet away, as opposed to what was an orb would be, maybe sometimes a kilometer out. And so now I'm dealing with something that seems to be able to get closer to me. So I could see it with my own 20/20 vision eyes with crystal clarity. But throughout these sightings was a pretty clear message too, to not film them. So they didn't really want to be filmed. And there was this weird game going on where if I tried to film, it would remain stationary. So you wouldn't, on the film, you can't see what it is. And then when I put the phone down, immediately it starts back up and it's doing something really strange, moving through the sky very weird, in a weird way that would display a UAP. So I listened to them and I just stopped filming them. And then, so over the months, she was repeatedly this airplane thing, doing close flybys of my home. And the way I discerned this object from a normal airplane is it had a weird sound. It didn't sound, I live by an airport. So I know, and I've been, 24, I'm 40 years old, and I've 20 years of living in skyrise apartments. I know what an airplane sounds like. And these things were not airplanes. They hummed, kind of a droney hum that sat in the background. And sometimes I described it as the sound of a jet. The sound a jet makes at 30,000 feet, but with an object that's only a couple hundred feet in front of your face. And that doesn't look like it should be producing a jet sound anyway. It looked like a propeller plane, and it was pitch black, and its FAA lights were irregular, though it had FAA lights. So they would turn off, which if you were a black object in the sky and you had FAA, you can't fly without having FAA lights. And so this thing would turn off its lights and then it would turn back on, and it'd be weird patterns of the FAA lights. So I mean, I can't put that on film because no one would believe me. So I let it be, but she remained in this form ever since June. Though, again, switching things up occasionally. Sometimes I saw an orb and sometimes I saw a black object. I was able to film in August or something. I put that film on my YouTube channel. And that was a daylight sighting that she gave me. But so that was it. I now had this weird object that was flying around. That was basically a plane that I considered to be the Elder. And I also got telepathy from this thing, and I was able to communicate with it, and I was able to communicate in a way that it responded. So all that kind of classic, what I would call CE5, which was a normal part of my experience with my entity, was happening with this airplane. So eventually started hearing about these drones, the New Jersey drones, and I think it was early December, and that there were, objects were having incursions into classified air, or like a, restricted airspace. And I think I was piqued interest. I think it came out in Reddit, and I started paying attention to it without really knowing what to make of it, and just very curious. And even actually the objects that they had filmed right away, I thought, oh, those behave like UAP. So I thought, yeah, that's probably UAP, but I didn't really know. And then I was watching a news broadcast, and a woman, it was the very early days of this New Jersey stuff, and the news were starting to take it seriously. And they had a film of it, and it was an airplane. And the woman says, and you can obviously see the object is looking like a jet, but is only a couple hundred feet in the sky, moving at a pace not like a jet. And she said it sounded like, and the hum it made was so irregular. So it didn't look like this object should be making this hum. It should look like an airplane. It should be going faster. And all of that matched exactly my experience with the Elder, like to the T. I thought that was really strange. I posted in a comment in Reddit about it that, hey, I'm noticing that this is matching my entities. Then another news report from one of the mayors in New Jersey, who had been consistently on CNN and a bunch of other news stations. And then he reported what he saw firsthand. And he said he saw a stationary object that was blinking green and red lights, sitting stationary, no sound. And he said and when it moved with such purpose and consistency, irregular to any drone or even an airplane. And I was like, that's my entities. That's exactly what they do. I see this repeated style of very controlled form of movement that does not match a drone. I know what a drone looks like. I'm not, I'm educated, and I watch everything I can to make sure I'm discerning what's what. And these are not drones. And his description matched something I'd experienced only just maybe a month or several weeks before, of the elder being a drone looking thing that was green and red, floating above my apartment, looking into my windows. And I didn't actually know. Like, she caught me off guard. And when I looked at it, I was like, what's going on? Like, and I was confused if this was actually the elder or not, because I'd never seen her do this. She's never like staring through a window. And when I looked at it, it moved as if it got caught. And then it moved to the left, and then stopped, and then slowly came down, and then just disappeared. And I was like, okay, that's got to be the elder. But what was with that behavior? I had never experienced it before. It actually had me weirded out, and I kept trying to come back in telepathy. Like, was that you? Like, why would you do that? What were you looking at? It weirded me out to be, being spied on through my windows. But then to have that news broadcaster guy say exactly the same type of behavior, I was sold. These are my guys. And not just that, the orbs I keep seeing are my red orbs. The same one I filmed back in 2020s when I got those red orbs, which are on my video, on my YouTube, on my webpage and on my YouTube channel. I'm seeing exactly the same type of orbs. And the way they behave, it's like an animal's behind them or something very natural. The way they kind of float up and they'll drift down and they'll move in such a weird, inconsistent with mechanical operation, as if it's like a life of its own, is exactly the type of behavior I witnessed from what I consider to be gray alien or their tech, or this Mantis tech, or whatever the whole bigger picture is. So having spent some time with this over maybe a week, I was giving this information to people close to me, and I felt I had enough information that I haven't seen anybody come forward yet saying, hey, I have, my evidence that these are whatever Palladians, or I don't know, whatever people would call them. So I just made a bold statement and felt like I actually needed to, for the purpose of other people too, because I feel like people are trying to figure this out. They want some information. They want someone to say this. And then I got a confirmation from a sighting to say it. So the elder came back. I filmed her and I gave that film to someone. It just looks like a plane, but the FAA lights are irregular, and she was doing circles repeatedly in front of my apartment, and for well over 40 minutes, if not an hour. And it was all aligned with me looking at previous films of her about this. So as soon as I was looking through films on my phone, she popped back up. And then I was asking pretty consistently, like, should I be talking about this? And they're like, yes. Like, we can't. And I actually said, listen, you give me a film of you going, if you give me a big film, I'll go big. And they're not doing that. Tells me so much, right? Like, they're in control of the message. They're in control of the public message. And they always have the ability to, land on the White House lawn and make a very big display, which they never do. And it's always very subtle. And there might be a reason behind that, and I do believe there is. So yeah, that produced a post that I have on Facebook, which is, I'm basically saying with 100% absolute certainty, these objects are related to the entities that I interact with. Now, all of them are. I obviously can't say that, because I don't know what's going on. I'm not fully certain what everybody's witnessing, but the behaviors all match. And a lot of the consistent reportings all match my firsthand experience with the entities directly. And then again, it also just adds up for me. I'm a guy who came out in 2019 with memories of my alien contact that I was supposed to tell the world that they're coming. And then lo and behold, 5 years later, it's getting so much more visible. That all adds up to me and is very consistent with a bigger picture. So.
Oh yeah, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. There's nothing like getting confirmation, because and I don't know, I'm not going to speak for you, Jeff, but in my experience with ET contact, there have been times where I wondered if I imagined the whole thing. Like, how could this be real? How could this be true? And then you get confirmation, and it just is so it's creepy, but in a really wonderful way. Now, before we get on with the conversation, I just want to acknowledge Woo Riders DG, who has joined us in the live chat, and also Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. So good to see both of you. And Woo Riders DG has
Yeah,
sort of a comment question. He said, all the drone sightings, I believe, are 95% or more government military operation. So what
yeah.
I'm wondering, Jeff, I know you've just given us wonderful information on how you know those are your guys, but I'm wondering if it could be a combination of military drones and your guys. Have you had any intel from the Greys on what percentage of these sightings are actually your beings?
No, no, obviously not. And something to be said here. Um, listen, like these videos and these objects have been filmed and posted and dissected, and I still haven't seen a single military person come out and say, "Oh, that's that model of drone," or "That's that model." And what drone do you have that's an airplane? I've never heard of the drone airplane. That doesn't make any, a plane that's the size of a car. This isn't making any sense. Some of these objects don't even add up to what they're looking at, and we don't have models. We literally don't have anyone. I haven't seen a single military person or anybody come out, and I've seen already a video of military drones as a way of people trying to distinguish these things, and these are clearly
Mhm,
not them. And we
mhm,
just had the video of the Ukraine. It was pretty awful. There was a video of a bombing in Ukraine, but very visibly, the object we're looking at is a drone, and it sounds like a drone. And people can
mhm,
really discern these things. And the reason people are filming these things is because they aren't acting and behaving in ways that are familiar to them. They're behaving in ways without sound. So, what I haven't heard this yet, that we actually now have objects that make zero sound, can float, right? We don't have this yet. And I guess the idea is we're supposed to have black projects that, do
mhm,
these experimental things, but they wouldn't be shutting down airports. They wouldn't be shutting down military installations. They wouldn't be purposely drawing attention to themselves if they were supposed to be private. And the problem is
mhm,
here too is that when they're over restricted military space, they're bright. They're purposely trying to draw attention. This is so unhuman. It's so the behavior doesn't match anything. So
mhm,
I just need to see it. That's all. I'm a skeptic too, and yet I
mhm,
have this experience that I can rely on, and I'm saying I don't see any evidence we're dealing with actual military until I see the models. And what's the other
mhm,
part too is, okay, we're dealing with things that, as far as I could see from some of the skeptics who looked at this, some of these objects would be worth in the hundreds of thousands of dollars if we're looking at car-sized drones that look like this. Now no, every picture is different.
mhm,
There's no consistent model. You're dealing with a different type of drone, different type of drone, different type of drone. This is not commercial, and the idea that the military is just making 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 versions of their own drones that they aren't doing anything with, just weirding out the population and shutting down their own installations. um, I'm sorry, that just doesn't make any sense.
mhm,
And what does make sense is that I've seen these entities match up with some of these objects, and that this is the beginning of non-human intelligence making themselves known. And they would do it. This is also their behavior, very much in line with their style. We'll mimic, we'll copy something that's in your world to make it
mhm,
okay when we get closer to you. And
mhm,
that's exactly what they've done with contactees. For anyone who's a contactee, they may pretend to be a human at first, or they may, we've heard of reports of the aliens being Jesus and stuff. Like, we're dealing with things with this is very consistent with their type of behavior, being very non-threatening, but getting really, really close and making a mystery be in your environment and sit there. So you are perplexed and are questioning what's going on and is starting the public conversation. That's all in line with NHI behavior. So that's my
mhm,
spiel to that. Again, I'd be happy to, shown different, to be shown wrong, but so far I haven't seen
mhm,
anything, and I've been scouring the information about it. So, yeah.
mhm. Now, another question that comes up for me is, do you think this is all the sightings that we've been seeing recently? Do you think that they have been, or at least the ones that you identify with, Do you think they're all basically from one group or one star system, or do you think that this is a collaboration with other ETs that they've come together and said, okay, it's time we start getting them used to the idea of us being here, and what's going on? Who are they more than one group? Are they
Yeah,
just one group? What's your take on that, Jeff?
I know it's I'm honestly perplexed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I've been in this field and the more I've interacted with these entities and the more that I know, I lean towards only one thing that I understand right now, which is
Mm-hmm.
and and what I know this to be is much bigger now than I ever thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's something reality creator going on here, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what's shocking to me. That this likely is some type of species that has been interacting with us and helping or assisting through the birth and death life cycle, helping with evolution, maybe purposely making a bad guy appear in history, you know, making the synchronicities to make a bad person show up, or maybe making the synchronicities and the life pattern for a positive person to show up and create a quick burst of evolution. um I'm not saying someone like Caesar or Einstein were aliens, but we don't know what's going on anymore. I'm at the point where I don't know what's going on anymore. I feel like any of these scenarios could actually have been NHI assisted with with permission. For me, the entities, this is what they did with me. That's the bottom line. And that's what my whole entire story is. They were kind of manipulators of reality almost. And then I agreed to it. They actually had my conscious agreement, and then they obstructed that from me, the guy who lived out his normal life. And I could see them doing that with anybody now. And I think that I know that the controller species is sitting at the top of all this, which would be consistent with the entities that people call the Mantis.
Mm-hmm.
And that that role they're playing seems to be so large. And I also know that they're shapeshifters. The entities themselves can shapeshift. And when you're interacting with them as a paranormal entity, you don't know you're dealing with an alien. You could be dealing with anything. So
Mm-hmm.
an alien actually could come off to you as a channel, and now you're channeling, something from a star system, and you don't know it's actually these entities. And then and the reason they would do these things is, I'm certain, is because there's a big shift coming, and they're actually helping with this transition. And the human brain is having trouble with the comprehension of these whole realms as it is. So I don't believe it's malevolent, but I do believe a big picture thing is happening, and I have trouble discerning what's what between the different types of entities. And all I really do know personally is that there are some type of humanoids. There's grays who have seem to have been here, who seem to have been some type of association with the planet, and then there's this
Mm-hmm.
controller species who is in charge of the entire thing, and maybe the most powerful of them all. And also, I just don't see any fractures between these groups. We don't see fighting. There's no fighting
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
people say there are fights and there's wars. I'm like, come on, like, this isn't making any sense. Not just that, we're dealing with paranormal entities. You can't make base plans or enemy plans, because they could just go into your world. So there's things
Yep.
that don't add up here with the picture, and I'm just seeing this one large reality creation simulation theory, birth and death life cycle,
Yes.
big picture stuff. And I can't
Mm-hmm.
make sense now of the smaller stuff anymore, though the grays are whatever this gray thing is real, and whatever this Mantis thing is real. And I do believe there to be some type of humanoids. I just have trouble now with the kind of the lower level of making sense of things, because for all we know, they could also be that. And that's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
confused by now. They could easily masquerade as something else, and
Mm-hmm.
there would be a reason to do that. That is beneficial for all of us. That maybe sometimes these things are hard to discern, and what they really are. So then they're isolating pockets of their information for certain groups of people, and that's what I think they do. They
Yep.
isolate. Hey, you need to know about time, so now I'm going to give you a channel who's all talking about time, and that kind of thing. And so now they're isolating pieces of information, so it evolves the entire population. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so when it comes to this, then I just don't know how to make sense of it, except for I'm witnessing things that I relate in behavior to my own entities. And that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much all I can say at that point.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. And I agree 100% based on my experiences. And my experiences are a little different than some of the other experiences. Mine involve other beings besides Grace. But when you take a bigger look at it, it's a very interesting spiritual phenomenon, and it does
Yeah.
involve the concepts from the simulation theory,
Yeah.
and how much of what we experience is real.
Yeah.
Very little. I mean, we only can visually, we can only uh, recognize a very, very tiny little narrow band on the light spectrum. Our ears only pick up a very small amount on the sound spectrum, and
Yeah.
on it goes. Same with what we feel. And I believe, and based on what I've learned, we're surrounded by other kinds of life that we just, first of all, we're not given the concepts or the language to understand it, but also our senses don't take it in. And unless you're a shaman, and shamans have been experiencing these other worldly experiences like forever. Maybe you and I are sort of modern day shaman, and not that I'm trying to put us on a pedestal, but you know what
Right.
I mean, that we
Yeah.
are able to make contact and to understand, and then our job is to tell other people about it. And that's why your book is so important and my book is so important.
Yeah.
And we don't have to agree on anything, because we're filtering it all through our own understanding, through our own life experience, and we're doing our best to put concepts that we have really have been eliminated from our programming, and we don't even have language for them. We're just trying to get it out there and let people know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but Jeff, I just want to take a minute and just welcome Angel Wings. She is one of my very lovely members of the channel. And I also want to welcome Alan. And I've already acknowledged Woo Riders DG in Tennessee, Kentucky, Bigfoot. I just wanted everyone in the live chat to know that I recognize you. I may not interrupt our conversation to get back to them, but I want you all to know that I do appreciate you coming. It's awesome. What a wonderful, wonderful community. And Jeff, I can give you a minute to finish up if you want before we move on. But I also want to take a quick break for a
Sure. Of
brief
course.
promotion. But
Yeah.
do you have anything you want to say before I take the quick break for the promotion?
Um, Happy New Year's and happy holidays, and thanks for having me, Karen. Yeah, you got it. No, I think that portion of the conversation's done. Yeah, it's great. It was good to cover that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
very, very good of you to come on the show and
yeah,
share your insights, because we're really wondering what the heck is going on.
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes what we don't know can be more upsetting than what we do
It,
know, and it's good.
yeah,
So when we come back after,
it's causing
go
panic, and I
ahead.
can see that. And you're right. I agree. And it's helpful actually to speak, even if I don't feel like I'm not theorizing, but speculating. I'm not trying to speculate, right? I
Hmm.
actually hate it. I actually don't like when people come out with big theories, speculative theories, and try to dominate the dialogue. But not that I hate anything, but I don't it's not helpful, I
Yeah,
don't think. But
yeah.
so I try to pull back from being that. And also I don't like to prophesize,
Hmm.
but I can't help but talk about my personal experience, and that's what I try to always draw from.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, when we come back from the short break, we're going to get into what does ET want and preparing for contact a little bit. So we'll be right back, folks. Don't go away. Hi, guys. Break time for a short message. Are you looking for the perfect, unique seasonal gift? Check out Zendone's Orgonite. They are my unique brand of orgone generators, and they are affordable, ethically sourced, handmade, and double charged for maximum effect. They are only available through my website, KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. These beautiful devices are simple compounds which balance ambient energy by converting negative energy and EMF into positive healing energy with many easily confirmed health benefits. They help diminish the harmful effects of negative energies and EMF by attracting and converting them, retuning them into new and more healthful sound and light wave patterns. They also produce orgone energy, which is also known as chi, prana, zero point, and life force. And you can use these devices for focusing the mind, healing, meditation, and for spiritual growth. Zendome's Orgonite are my unique brand of orgone generators, and they are only available through my website. Don't be fooled by imitations. Check out my website to see my latest selection at KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHolton Healthcoach.com. Check them out today. Now, let's get back to the show. And we're back. We're back with Jeff Selver. He's an author. He has published a book called The Rising, which is all about his many, many experiences with the gray aliens. And we're talking today about the recent sightings that have been just so many, too numerous to even count. If you haven't done so already, go back and watch the first half of the program where Jeff very clearly explains how he knows that these sightings are actual ETs and how he knows that they are of the same group that he has had interactions with and has included in his book. So if you haven't done so already, please do go and check out his book. The link is below, and it's called The Rising, and I think you'll find it very helpful and very interesting. So now that we're back, I just want to thank everyone in the live chat again for joining us. How lovely. And I may not get to all of your questions and comments, but I'll do the best I can. But what I want to do next is talk to Jeff about what does ET want? I think a lot of people are experiencing fear right now. And I think it would be good if we talked about what ET wants. Jeff, what have you got to say about that?
So is this in line with the same question as preparing for contact? Is that, or is it a separate question, do you think?
You know what? However you want to
However you want to
address
interpret it.
either one is just
Yeah.
fine. Like there's no real, I got to tell you, all divisions on everything are actually constructs for illustration purposes. So just go wherever you want to go with this. It's all going to be super helpful.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty convinced that there's a big picture here. Maybe the planet was not fully ours. Like we're born into it, we're made of it, and then the entities involve themselves in the genetic upbringing of humans. And it was all for the purpose of the birth and death life cycle, and for us to, it is all that woo element of all this. The thing that people don't want to be real, the divine aspect of this, the God part of it, is all real. That we are on this earth to create experience for the God field, and there is a God field, there is a unified field. This is all real. This whole thing is real. That's part of the picture. That's why I'm actually convinced disclosure has taken so long, is because this isn't just an alien agenda. And this isn't just about humans, doing something to the world or the planet. And this isn't just about it being spiritual. It's in fact all of it. And it's a large, large picture that's actually hard to swallow. And I think it hits the core of what we believe to be the nature of reality and the purpose you've created for yourself while you're living. And that's all at play. That's all at stake. It's all at stake. And I think there's only one thing that matters to get through this. And it's the thing nobody wants to hear. God is real. Mm-hmm. And the unified field force is real, and it is a part of you, and you are it. And when the human struggles with this, and it does take lifetimes to kind of understand and be grounded and then utilize it, because there's a whole aspect here. When you get into that space, you can utilize it. So I'm 100% convinced that's all real, and that's in large part, the purpose of the human existence on the planet. But it appears the aliens, maybe, I guess the ways to frame this is maybe they gave us time to develop. Mm-hmm. There was all part of the plan, is to give us some space on the planet. Maybe it's the last 10,000 years, the Younger Dryas. Maybe it was before. I don't know those details. But there is something here where they're coming back. So it's actually not a scenario of outside aliens, taking over or something. It's actually a scenario where they're saying, okay, that's done. What you did is done now, and we're coming back. And it's a plan. It's actually a plan. And a takeover is the wrong word. Domination is the wrong word. But I always try to frame it like pods, whale pods, because it's more like nature. It really is. These guys are they're more in line with nature as it is, and humans are less in line with nature. These guys are life preservers. We might be perceived, the species, as not being life preservers. Things like that, I think, are what at play here. And so they're intervening, and the intervention might be such a large picture. Like, humans might not have been believing that we're collapsing, but for them, we might be collapsing. There's a bunch of whole reasons why I think that they think that way. And I think Daniel Sheenan actually had some good words, and he says it comes from the species that he knows to be the Mantis, that was told to someone in the military or in the government or something. But that they're concerned for the life-preserving properties of our planet, so that the planet can't preserve life anymore, is a problem for aliens who use this planet as well too. And so there's a big picture here of them intervening, and that intervention is as far as I'm aware, is more benevolent than you want it to be. It's so much more woo than you want it to be. It's so much more filled with finding out that you are an eternal spirit. You are, you're part of the birth and death life cycle. God is real. All these aspects are, and then dimensionality expands from there. And you might find out that these guys were actually dimensional scientists, and that they enjoy exploring the dimensional nature of the universe, and they do it with their tech. And they might even be inviting us to come along now. And but all of that, what's at stake is that our human world didn't really, do anything to create a scenario where we could understand this. So then our entire civilization and our humanity, I think, is at stake, because we used to think it was all about capitalism. It was all about, I'm not being hard on capitalism, but I have an MBA, and I'm very aware of, the system, and it's the gross domestic product that funnels this. And what the gross domestic product is the GDP, is, can you turn resources in your country into a product? Meaning, can you take things from your land, mining, forestry? It's the whole infrastructure that takes from the planet to produce something, and that is going to fall apart, because you can't do that anymore with these guys. So then it becomes a big picture problem about what keeps us afloat as a species, and what we have been doing and everything we've been doing. So I think there is a big shock that's part of this. I'm 100% convinced there's an ontological shock for every single one of us. Even of us who have had contact, we can speak to some of those elements, but I'm still going through, like, oh my God, I'm now getting where this is going. And I'm still going through my own process about it. But so I do believe it's an intervention from a highly benevolent, a highly dimensional, a highly kind species that is trying to manage us, that's trying to figure us out and work with us. And we, again, might be seen as the kind of warmongering, slightly primitive, can't address real problems type of scenario, and enough to keep our own species alive. I think that's kind of the thing. And, we're all sucked into our world. It's really hard to argue with this stuff. You're like, yeah, but, I got to watch my TV show. I got to play my video game. I got to go to work and feed my family. Like, what are you talking about, right? And there's these very base fundamental realities for us that don't allow us to make any changes. And the governments, it's not a person. It's not it's not 5 families that control the world. There's like hundreds of thousands of people running everything, corporations and banks and all countries. And it's a huge system. And, we're stuck in the system. So I think that they're intervening in a way that might be such a shock for all of us. And, and how they're doing that, I have some belief about what I think is going on. But I think it's important to say that, I think the most important thing here is spirituality and God. I really do. Because you can't make sense of their consciousness tech if you don't believe there's a unified field. You can't make sense
Yes.
of their dimensionality, and where they're even originating from doesn't make sense in any type of physics we have. And so it only
Mm-hmm.
makes sense in one strata, consciousness. That there's astral
Mm-hmm.
planes, there's dimensional realms. They can be in the future. That can be, alternate realms. All these things. Yes, quantum is now linking in with this, but it's all originating of consciousness, and because the unified field is real, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the only solace here. It really is the only solace. Is like, okay, it doesn't matter what happens to the world around me. I'm at peace within. Is the only
Mm-hmm.
thing you've got. Because what might end up happening is everything might shift in a big, big way. And I'm convinced that's going to happen. And
Yeah, me too.
yeah, and I don't
Totally.
know how to make that nice. I don't think there's any nice picture here. I don't think there's a, oh, don't worry, everything will be great. I don't believe that.
Well, you got to crack a few eggs if you want to make an omelet, and
It's like
systems
that.
have to fall so that
Yeah,
new
yeah,
systems can come about. It's like
yeah,
the Argyle sock or the spiral. Things
yeah,
are always shifting. The seasons are
yeah,
shifting,
yeah,
the planet's shifting. But we've
yeah.
been, in my opinion, not to take away from what you're saying, but in my opinion, we've been contained within an artificial construct through the
Mm,
educational system, religious system, political system, economic system,
right.
and it's not all that there is. And now that is crumbling because of seeing actual evidence of what we call extraterrestrials, who might not be so extraterrestrial, who might be basically crypto-terrestrial,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
definitely transdimensional. Now, I
Yeah.
have another question that came up that the audience might be wondering, and that is about religion. So we see a lot of upheaval today on religious beliefs and family lineages, and I'm talking like Abrahamic different groups that descended from and stuff like that. It's my understanding from my ET contact that none of the Earth religions are actually universal; that they're all constructs, and that the way that ETs see it is kind of half spiritual, half mathematic. It's the quantum field, it's universal consciousness, and it's much bigger than what any of us can even imagine. Do you want to just speak to that, Jeff?
Uh, Sorry, Karen, the question I didn't actually pick up. So
Okay,
you talked a bit about
sorry,
religion as well
I
too.
no, I tend to ramble a bit, so that's
No,
all
no, and
good.
it's okay. Just asking for clarity. That's all.
Basically, from your contact with the Greys,
Yeah.
do they believe or subscribe to any one religious belief, or is it
Oh,
bigger than that, where it's
right.
about the quantum field and universal consciousness and something much bigger than what many of us can even imagine?
Yeah.
Or is it,
Yeah.
or do they subscribe to Catholicism or Judaism or the Muslim, like,
Right. Right. Right.
personally, I kind of know what you're going to say, but the
Yeah.
audience may be wondering this.
Yeah. You got it. Right. Right. I think that, okay. This is because I'm trained in Vedic. Actually, in Vedic, they get all this stuff. They just understand it. It's actually also why I'm convinced the aliens did what they did with me, knowing I'd be with a Vedic guru who would help me understand. My Vedic guru helped me understand what the aliens did with me. So there was a very
Mhm,
interesting relationship with Vedic philosophy and what they understand about the mind and the spirit and the nature of reality. And they got all this stuff pat down thousands of years ago. And so how I frame all the world's religions, the human mind is, you actually just said something about you know the governments and the education. We're in this construct. And it's
mhm,
because of my Vedic philosophy, I actually take a bit of a compassionate stance that, I mean, we can't deny humans are blind spiritually, right? We're
mhm,
born blind. We have no ability to understand what's real outside of our own five senses. And that's the Vedic philosophy. So, we don't know. And so you actually have to spend time working with the self and working with the mind to understand how is my mind affecting my perception of reality. And that's something that you have to get trained in to do. You have to work with
mhm,
and then find what's your actual reality, what's the source of me versus what is the part of me that's making everything up. And that's a practice, and that's work, and that's hard. So then I see all of these problems, or maybe, education and all this stuff, as just byproducts that are historically repeating. That's all they are. Romans also couldn't understand the nature of reality, and neither could Greeks, and neither could, the early Muslims, and neither could the Judeans, right? Like it's really challenging, and that's why the human makes up all these religions, or doesn't make up, but creates all these religions. And what's happening is, I'm convinced, is people are touching something real in all of their religions. They're touching something they know to be true, and it's a part of their consciousness. So then they are trying to understand it, and then they're using their historical contexts. They're using their world to make sense of what's going on. And Greeks could not remove themselves from the fact that they lived in a genealogy. My dad is important to me. I've come from the lineage of my dad, and I'll have a child, and my child, and my name is important to this world, and that's the only thing I got. So then that's the only thing you care about. So then when you look at your gods, you can't imagine that they're any different. So Zeus had children, right? And Venus was a product of Zeus. And then, these were all interlinked, and they had children, and you can't get away from the idea that they were all themselves, making love and having children, and then birthing and keep birthing. And so we're having personal experiences, and we have no way to frame them but within the way that our brains are structured in the society that they're in. And that's what's going on. And I think that the human actually has the potential to find the truth in all of the religions, but that takes practice, right? It takes time. I'm convinced that someone can actually find God within Christianity and within Judaic philosophy and Vedic philosophy. And that's why they've persisted all these thousands of years, not because humans are mindless sheep, but because people actually can experience God within these things. So this is actually, I had a brief conversation with the twin in my 10th contact event, and he actually said this was the main problem with where we are now, is that our religions couldn't come together. We actually have a part of our own brain, which it's described in much more detail in my 10th contact event. So I'm trying to summarize here, but we have maybe an ego defect in our brain that is constantly fighting for our own individuation. And it is kind of maybe individuation versus community. And that individuation aspect is at play strongest on the global scale. And that's the problem. Had we actually had any type of part of ourselves that could come together as a collective planet, we'd be able to make the proper decisions we need to get over this new era. And he actually pointed to religion being the problem, saying, your religions couldn't even come together. And it's kind of funny if you think about it, right? Between all the religions, they're all doing the same thing, right? They're all saying God is real. They're all saying, some version of them are all saying their version of God is real, but they're all trying to do and accomplish the same thing. And even on the global scale, they couldn't come together. They couldn't say, okay, let's all come together and say, this is what we're all trying to achieve, or this is God. And without having a collective belief system, a collective something that we could all grab onto, then it caused this fracture as we're moving into all the problems we're about to have. And it's very interesting. So I see it as we're in a matrix, which is our mind. The mind is the projector of the world, and the thought forms, they contribute to that. And that's something we can't get out of. And that's the thing we birth into on purpose, to get into that experience, that type of challenge. And it grows and develops our spirit to do that, which develops ourselves in the afterlife, by the way. And so that's what I think is the big turning point to all this. And the entities, 100%, I don't believe they experience. I know they do, because I experienced it with them on craft. And that's what my story is. If you even believe in my words as they're coming out of my mouth right now, then I prove to myself, and that's what my whole story is. It's the proof of maybe the spiritual nature of the entities, even though they can do things like biological hybrid programs and all that stuff. So the entities 100% believe in a unified field. They experience it with their tech. I frame it that they've captured God. The unified field is alive. It is God. It is the conscious unified field of the universe, the field. And then if you have a quantum computer, can you capture it, right? And then utilize it. And then can you experience non-duality with it? And that's really what's going on here with their tech. They can experience non-duality. The elder always refers to herself as us. We come with us. Right? I'm meeting her down the ground on a field when I'm 16 and she's saying, come with us. It's just her, right? But she's referring herself as the collective, right? And, you know, in the negative dark, you know, versions of this, people say that's the hive mind. I'm like, no, they're experiencing God. That's what it is. They're experiencing unity in their own collective, right? So the come with us, right? She's always referring to the plural of herself, right? And it's because they are experiencing a unified field, and they experience it with their tech, and they experience it with their crafts, and humans can too. And that's what I think the contactee is. And, you know, John Mack discovered this in his books and his studies, and that's what my story is. And so what is the bigger picture there? I actually don't know. I'm convinced they live in a bit of mystery about the nature of the universe, even though they're on the afterlife dimensions. I think there still might be a bit of a mystery about why the universe does what it does and allows to occur what it does. But they definitely know that the unified field is real. I don't think they call it God, but they may call it the soul field. And yeah, and I don't think that all the structures of the human ideas, I don't think any of those things are in their heads, though they do have masters. And I experience them to have a master. I meet one of their masters. So they have like kind of spiritual hierarchies in their society. And I'm not the only one to experience that. Susie Hansen put a post on Facebook not too long ago where she divulges, you know, the constant and continuous contactees experiencing elders, like the masters, if you will, or the gurus of the gray aliens kind of thing. Like, so they definitely perceive spiritual hierarchies in their own society. And that's the only information I have about it. Other than that, all of our stuff is real in their world. The paranormal, the God stuff, the afterlife, past lives, all that's real. But how much more it goes into their world, I don't know. And except for that, I know that from being on their craft that they experience the unified field. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. Now we got a few minutes left, and I thought maybe you could use this time to offer the listeners and the viewers some advice on how to prepare for contact. Because if
yeah,
everyone's freaking out over what they've seen in the last month, I can't imagine what they're going to do with the upscale of contact in the near future, which I believe is absolutely happening and going to happen. And I'm
yeah.
wondering if you could just talk a bit about how they can prepare themselves for contact.
I think people need to find their source. I use the word God because I did not grow up with any Christian background, and so I can perceive the unified field of awareness to be a part of me, and it's alive. I think that's the most important part to always emphasize. It's not a mechanical energy; it's awareness, and um, and you have to find your source, not just because when you start interacting with them, you're going to need that to interact with them, but I think it's going to help with the traumas and the struggles that are about to emerge. And you need to know your power. You need to. That's what the point about finding your source is: finding your power. People are terrified because they're scared of their power being removed, even as a species. And I think that's a valid fear. But I think that the entities aren't in a place to do that. They're not. That's not their desires to make you terrified. And I know that actually they told me that specifically to make sure I'm not putting messages out there like that, because they don't want people to be terrified. They don't want this to be War of the Worlds. This is definitely friendly space neighbor, and they really want that type of image. And it's because these guys are naturalists and life preservers. And I think that finding your source and your power, your how to empower yourself with your consciousness, is the most fundamental and important thing that people could be doing. I think people should be meditating. I think if people meditated regularly, they wouldn't have any of these problems. I think that people should be finding how to become more spiritual, not so they can interact with an alien, but because they need to discover themselves and find their power. And they need to live in fearlessness about it. And the only way they can do that is by knowing where their power is in this. And I think know that any entity that's here that's interacting with us is benevolent. Is benevolent. Is benevolent. If you soaked yourself into a whole bunch of theories about how dark they are and they're demons, I don't know how to help you. But if you can imagine that maybe all these stories that all the people have been telling for decades just go back to John Mack. Like, I still don't have really proper accounts of how dark and evil and demon like they are. I have all the proper accounts for how benevolent they are, though. So we got to figure that, like, the public is going to get so washed with this because we've been living in mythologies for decades here, and we need to get the facts straight. And the facts are, these guys are good guys. And we need to know that, because if they're going to interact with us and we're terrified of them, they can't come close to us. And so things like problems like that are about to emerge. And so we have to find our source. You have to find your power. You have to know intuitively, wait, my source says I can trust that, because that's what you need. You need your consciousness. You need your higher self. You need to meditate, and you need to find God separate from aliens. And then that's what you're going to need when this new world comes in.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I myself have had only positive experiences, and it has been very much tied into spirituality. I used to be involved in different religions, and eventually I just saw them as being so limited. And this is just speaking for myself. I'm not trying to push this on anyone else, but I realized that my consciousness had grown too big to fit into any one religion.
Right.
So then what I did was I searched for the golden threads that were in every religion and every
Yes.
spiritual belief,
Yeah.
and found out where they all connected. And then that was where I started to search for my own spiritual truths. For instance, treat other people the way you want to be
Right.
treated, which is mirrored in harm none, which is
Right.
mirrored in every different belief system. And it all comes down to love, learning to love yourself, learning to love other people, and not romantic love, but finding out what love even means and how that can manifest. But anyway, I've had nothing but positive experiences. I've learned a lot, and I believe that we've been given these experiences so that we can share them and let other people know what's going on. I think part of the problem is we've been taught from an early age to look to external sources for guidance. And although our books are external sources of guidance, I think ultimately our message is to go within, start
Right.
looking within yourself for the answers. Once
Right.
you get that core stability, it doesn't matter what's going on outside, it's not going to shake you. You basically become unshakable.
Right.
And I think that's really important too. So our time is pretty much up, but Jeff, I want to give you a minute to any final words you might have for the audience, and also tell people where they can find you. As I mentioned, the links are below in the description, but some are going to be listening to this on an audio platform, and I think it would be really beneficial if they hear you actually speak the words of where people can find you as well. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Karen. Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me. Happy holidays to everybody out there. And, anybody who's listening, you're looking for the truth. And that's the only reason I can speak, is that I've had some experiences. Everything has been validated for me. So I'm as honest as I can be to tell people what's happened. And, I'm doing this for everybody else, right? Like, this is not something you become famous for. This is something that we know, us contactees, that this is coming. I've been saying so for 5 years, since my memories have come out, and yeah, it's coming. And I think that, believe in good, right? Believe in the positive, and believe in good, and believe that if this was dark and evil demon creatures, they wouldn't be coming as something that you could be comfortable with, like a drone. So yeah, this is the benevolent guys, and have peace about it. And hey, it might be a bit of a fun game to watch to see what happens here. So people can find my book. My book is The Rising. My name is Jeff Selver. So you can find my book at my website, my full name, JEFFSELVER.com. My book is The Rising and the Alien Plan to Build an Enlightened City on Earth. And yeah, my grand message always that I love to put out there, especially for this Christmas holidays, you're God. You got the unified field inside of you, and you are it. It's not something external. You've illusioned yourself about your individuality, and non-duality is so much more real than people know it is. And you are God, and you are the unified field. And happy holidays to you.
Awesome. Awesome. So good to have you back, Jeff. And Jeff is going to be with us next week along with Nancy Thames. And we're going to get into a bit of a message for how to prepare for contact in the new year. In the meantime, yes, everybody have a happy holidays, regardless of how you celebrate, and be safe and enjoy your life because it's really important and it passes so quickly. So with that, we'll see you hopefully Wednesday for the Quantum Guide Show. Of course, most of you will probably be eating and making merry, but we'll see you next week on the Aliens and Angels podcast. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.